Members of the Hobart and William Smith Colleges community, I am Melanie Hamilton, Associate Professor of English. As the Faculty Marshal, it is my honor to officially proclaim the 2018-19 academic year open. "200 years ago, this coming September, as the sun appeared on the horizon, Bishop John Henry Hobart stood on a hill overlooking Seneca Lake. He turned to his companions with the words, 'Here, gentlemen, is the spot for the college.' 85 years later, William Smith peered further than Bishop Hobart into that vast horizon and announced the founding of the coordinate college that bears his name. Classes of 2022, you have the privilege of looking even further than either of these men. What will you see? Who will you become when you see it? To make a right beginning of your time together, I invite you to pause and give thanks. For the wealth of experiences that led us to this day, for the trusted friends, the cherished loved ones, and the wise teachers who guided us, give thanks. For the dizzying mix of anxiety and excitement that spurs us, if we let it, to do our very best, give thanks. For the challenges that will stretch us beyond the possible, and for the failures that will teach us to persevere, give thanks. For all who welcome us into this community and make it a gracious place of learning and growth, those widely celebrated and those unsung, give thanks. May our gratitude for the gifts we have received so open our eyes to the horizon and our hearts to those around us, that everyone we meet from this day forward has a reason to pause and give thanks. Amen. Please be seated. And now it is my honor and privilege to welcome the presider over today's ceremonies, Interim President Patrick McGuire.
You look great. Thank you, Chaplain Charles and Professor Hamilton. Student government leaders John Camera and Sophie Ritter, student trustees Caden Lasher and Gavin Gross, Professor Dwayne Lucas, Deans Lisa Kenzik and Karam Hussein, Professor Lisa Schaefer, Trustee Jeremy Cushman, and our very special guest, William Smith class of 1985, Margarita Ramos. Members of the faculty, staff, students of Hobart and William Smith, and our Geneva neighbors. Welcome to Convocation. On this late summer day, we are called together as a community to celebrate the opening of what promises to be a remarkable academic year, one that will be defined by our commitment to academic excellence, integrity, and leadership. This is a year in which we hold ourselves and one another to the highest of standards as intellectuals, community members, and human beings. Behind me are 5 images that we selected to represent areas in which Hobart and William Smith are national leaders. They are a visual reminder of some of the things that matter to us at Hobart and William Smith, of what we hold dear and at which we excel. For the second year in a row, we have the #1 study abroad program in the nation. A very public acknowledgement of our deep and abiding commitment to global education and to the powerful lessons learned when you put yourself in another place and into another perspective. Our work in this area has made us one of the top colleges and universities with the most recipients of the U.S. Fulbright Student Awards. According to Sports Illustrated and Money Magazine, we have one of the best environments for great athletics, matched by an outstanding education. This is a place where leadership in athletics is defined by more than just a score sheet. Here, success in athletics is also about civic engagement and academic excellence, respect, integrity, loyalty, and hard work. Every student on our campus participates in community service. In fact, we believe it is impossible to lead a life of consequence without giving back to the community. And our students do that every day. This is why we've been ranked 14th in the nation for having one of the most actively engaged student bodies, and it's why we have taken a leadership role in sustainability efforts. The fourth photo is of the Blackwell Room, one of the many spaces on our campus where faculty and students engage in the multifaceted work of teaching and learning. Our faculty are exceptional, true leaders in their individual fields. But they are also outstanding collaborators with their students, connecting with students in meaningful ways, pushing them to excel and to explore. Our students are so enthusiastic about the faculty and the quality of the academic program at HWS that their feedback landed HWS 7th in the nation on the top student-rated professors. Finally, we come to a photo that has deep meaning for me personally. This is a photo of Professor of Chemistry Christine DeDennis and rising senior Chris Williams. The two were photographed at last year's annual Involvement Expo, where they were representing the First Generation Initiative, an HWS group designed to support first-generation students on campus. I, too, am a first-generation student. At HWS, we are steadfast in making education accessible and inclusive, and are dedicated to ensure that all our students have the kind of education that allows them to go into the world with confidence and clarity, whether it's careers in finance or technology, education or the arts, science or the humanities. This can only be accomplished with a steady, purposeful, and strategic commitment to and investment in equity, diversity, and justice. Hobart and William Smith are devoted to these values and pledge to uphold them. So my call to action for you this year is to live up to the reputation of the colleges and our expectations of you. Be intellectually curious, act with purpose and integrity, be kind to one another, cultivate a steady focus on equity and justice, and demonstrate through your words and actions that you are a leader. It is now my privilege to introduce, representing our Board of Trustees, whose leadership allows the colleges to thrive, Dr. Jeremy Cushman, Hobart class of 1996. Dr. Cushman is a board certified in emergency medicine and emergency medical services, and is an associate professor of emergency medical and chief of the Division of Pre-Hospital Medicine at the University of Rochester. He is also medical director for the Monroe-Livingston region and dozens of fire and EMS agencies. He provides the medical support and scene response for all law enforcement, fire departments, and special operation teams in the city of Rochester and Monroe County. He is also advisor to the HWS EMT program. He doesn't sleep much. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cushman.
Thank you, President McGuire. It's my great honor on behalf of the Board of Trustees and Chairman Tom Bizzuto to welcome you all to Hobart and William Smith Colleges. Now, despite the fact that most of you were not born the year I sat in the same spot you are, or actually it was supposed to be, because we were supposed to be in Stern Hall, now we're here. So when I was here, this didn't exist, but you get the point. Time has truly flown by. I still recall navigating the campus and the responsibilities of my new role. But what a wonderful position to be in. To have new experiences that test our intellectual agility, that demand we grow emotionally, and that require us to see the world in new ways. For one of the great things about a Hobart and William Smith education is that it imbues upon you a desire for lifelong learning, inquisition, and exploration. If you will, supporting your future as a perpetual student. Now, for most, I say that in a very figurative sense. For me, little did I know when I graduated that I still had another 9 years of formal education ahead of me, but you get the point. But truly, as an emergency physician, the things I learned from my professors, staff, coaches, and fellow students on this campus, the quintessential liberal arts education, form the foundation of a career and life that requires constant learning and discovery, an environment that can change in minutes with life on the line. So for the next 4 years, this will be your environment for learning and discovery, for quiet reflection and celebration, for experiences and relationships that will last a lifetime. This environment here on the shore of Seneca Lake will value you, will give you tools to succeed in whatever academic pursuit and career you can possibly imagine, and will challenge and support you. This is an environment and a community, a home where your talents can shine. Now, like any home, it also comes with a family, even that uncle guy that we might not like. But just like the families that brought you here, we will nurture you, look out for you, challenge you, and have expectations of you. We may disagree, but we will always respect. We will do our best to provide you with the information you need to make the best choices for yourself, because your time here as a member of the Hobart and William Smith family is just that. It's all about choices. Choices that will reflect upon you, your community, and this family. Choices that will engage talents and abilities you never even thought were within yourself. Choices that will forever alter your life in the way tens of thousands of other Hobart and William Smith students have borne witness to. So in the coming years, you will have triumphs and you will have failures. You'll have wins and you'll have losses. But you will achieve collectively far more than any one of you could possibly accomplish alone. You will come to understand the meaning of High Timiai and Druid, of Koshari and honors projects, of herons and of statesmen. And you will make choices, define yourself, and become an active citizen in this community. You too will become an integral part of this environment and will be enriched by these colleges as much as you enrich them. And in doing so, you will no doubt begin your life of consequence. And so on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and in great appreciation to the faculty and staff that will become your mentors and friends as they have mine, welcome to Hobart and William Smith Colleges in the beginning of the academic school year.
Thank you, Dr. Cushman. Joining us today to deliver the convocation address is an alum who, like Dr. Cushman, is truly leading a life of consequence. From the Hobart and from the William Smith class of 1985, Margarita Ramos is the global head of human resource compliance for the Bank of America Merrill Lynch. As a member of the William Smith Alumni Council and a former trustee, Ramos has spent her career as a labor and employment lawyer, both in the public and private sectors, dedicating her life to fostering environments in which people are valued, respected, and given equal opportunities to thrive. As a student at William Smith, Ramos majored in sociology and education, was a member of High Timiai and Koshari, and served as president of the Latin American organization. After earning her law degree at the State University of New York at Buffalo, Ramos began her career in law with the National Labor Relations Board, which was responsible for protecting workers' rights and enforcing labor laws by addressing unfair employment practices. She was the director of labor relations at the Metropolitan Hospital Center, a New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation facility in Spanish Harlem, where she grew up. She later joined Merrill Lynch Employment Law Group, where as part of a small team of employment lawyers, she traveled throughout the United States and sometimes internationally, mediating and investigating employee complaints. She has since held senior HR roles at JP Morgan, Chase, and Smith Barney. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute delight to present our speaker for tonight, Margarita Ramos.
I'm really excited to be here today. I want to thank the students, Board of Trustees, the William Smith and Hobart Alumni Associations, Interim President Pat McGuire, Geneva community leaders, and Hobart and William Smith administrators and professors. I also want to thank my daughter, Angelicia, her partner, Nick, my grandchildren, Isabella and Giovanni, and my partner, Kirk Gordon. I feel honored to be surrounded by family and friends. What does it mean to have a voice? Have you ever wondered what your voice is, or struggled to speak the words that seem trapped inside? What does voice have to do with identity and how you will experience the world and follow your dreams? Do you take your voice for granted because you've always been welcome to debate, question, wonder out loud? I was like you 37 years ago, preparing to enter this whole new world at Hobart and William Smith, a world that was very different from where I came from and seemed so foreign at the time. The reasons why I think these colleges are so special are too numerous to mention. But if I had to choose one reason, I would say this place is where I began to understand that I have a voice. My voice is strong. It matters. This environment was a foundation where I could experiment with that voice, and it changed my life. I'm going to share with you today how I found my voice here at these colleges. I used to feel like I didn't deserve a voice. Part of that was because of my culture. I am Puerto Rican, raised by an old school Puerto Rican mother who had firm rules about what girls should and should not do. I wasn't allowed to whistle. That was something boys could do, and I loved to whistle. I'd whistle privately so my mother would not hear me. This small example illustrates why it was so hard for me to find my voice. I was not expected to use it. I am the youngest of 5 Latina daughters raised in New York City by a single mother. She migrated to New York in the 1950s and had no formal education or command over the English language. I was her translator. My mother worked as a seamstress in factories in Queens or the Bronx. It wasn't stable work, so she sought assistance from a variety of social service agencies. I grew up understanding poverty and marginalization. I lived it. As my mother's translator, I learned how to listen. I learned when and how to challenge and how to articulate what we as a family needed. I have come to know many Latinas who grew up with the same role, which was translator, a voice, but not our own. As we waited in crowded rooms for our turn to be considered for social services, my mother would engage in small talk with other Latina women, and she would often volunteer my translation services. These Latinas were maternal, warm, proud, hilarious in their native tongues, protective, and beautiful. However, in this environment, they were lost and powerless. I internalized their pain, and I tried my best to bring light into their situations. We were in it together. I was proud to be my mother's voice. I learned a lot by being my mother's voice. It wasn't my voice, but by acting as her voice, her translator, I learned how to manage and evaluate adults. I was particularly adept at managing angry adults. When social workers rose from their city-issued desks and waved their fingers at me to admonish my mother for failing to evidence a document that would make us eligible for government assistance, I learned how to smile at my mother. I removed humiliation worn by the crease on her brow. I understood that it was humiliating enough to be uneducated and unable to speak English. I could not add to that burden by translating a social worker's disdain and anger. I learned how to strip emotion from the facts. These experiences taught me empathy and the value of advocacy, particularly for those who are defenseless. The most important lesson I took away is the value of education and knowing how to use that power for good. How many of you take your voices for granted? I remember sitting in a classroom early in my freshman year and being in awe of a Hobart student who stood up and challenged a professor. Where I grew up in the New York City public schools, that debate would have been recognized as an act of aggression, resulting in suspension or worse. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't express your voice. Your voice was not supposed to rise to the head of the class. But here, at these colleges, I saw that students were encouraged to use their voices. I was inspired. I realized people do want to hear your point of view, and maybe my point of view, too. How does one prepare to live a life of consequence? When I think back of where I was 37 years ago as a freshman, I didn't have a clue about what the next 4 years had in store for me, and I couldn't even fathom I would attend law school and become a lawyer. What I understood was that I was fortunate to attend a school that was governed by a framework known as the Coordinate Education System. The Coordinate Education System still exists today. However, most of you probably don't know what it is. So what does it mean? I would describe Coordinate as the model or framework, the engine that allows these two schools to operate together and separately. Coordinate was designed to ensure that each school would have separate governance structures, identities, and traditions. What this meant to me as a young woman is that I didn't have to compete with men for a seat on the William Smith Congress or to become a resident advisor. As a young woman who was struggling to find her voice, this was an important advantage that fueled my growth and leadership on this campus. Coordinate meant that I had a dean named Rebecca Fox, who advocated for me and all William Smith students. Rebecca was a strong advocate and believed in women supporting women. There are a number of William Smith alumni who grew up in this coordinate culture and are using our voices today to express its importance, to keep it alive. Living a life of consequence doesn't just happen. It requires surrounding yourself with like-minded people, challenging yourself to understand those who think differently than you, and stepping outside of your comfort zone every once in a while. This is the value of Coordinate. It gave me the freedom to explore who I was, to take appropriate risks, and to test my voice. Here, I was empowered to interact, to challenge, and become my best self. I was still searching for my voice when I arrived on campus, but I dove into campus life. I took advantage of everything these colleges had to offer. I danced with Koshar, I was president of the Latin American organization, and I was a member of Hi Timmy I, the William Smith Honor Society. I took women's studies classes and read books written by famous women authors such as Maya Angelou and Audre Lorde. I attended talks from poets, political figures, and world leaders who challenged me to expand my thinking about culture, race, feminism, ethnicity, gender, and leadership. I hung out with members of the Farm Club, too. In fact, one day a member of the farmhouse asked if I'd be interested in farming the land while bare-breasted. Without skipping a beat, I replied, "That's not going to happen." How did I find William Smith in the first place? I visited the campus of Hobart and William Smith colleges for the first time around the age of 12. I was a Fresh Air child. For those who may not be familiar, the Fresh Air Fund is a nonprofit based in New York City. And since 1877, they have been sending poor children to camp in 14 states from Virginia to Maine. Their camping model was non-traditional. Instead of living in cabins with other children and camp counselors, I spent summers living with a family in Waterloo, New York, about 2.5 miles away from where I stand today. My first visit to Waterloo happened when I was 5 years old. That was a very different time in this country, and Waterloo was a tiny slice of white Americana, a world very far from the inner city neighborhood in New York City I called home. I have fond memories of tasting vegetables that didn't come from a supermarket, running across blades of wet grass in the early morning, learning how to swim, riding and crashing in homemade go-karts, and otherwise living my young life like a child. On occasion, when I and members of the DeBolt family stepped outside of our small-town bubble and into the real world, people would sometimes stare. I certainly looked out of place. I had no real notion of race or differences, but I understood why some people were curious about my relationship to this white family. On the surface, I was nothing like them. During those summers, I rarely saw anyone who looked like me, but it didn't matter because it was the first time in my young life that I felt safe. When I share Fresh Air Fund stories with friends, I'm often asked whether I was treated differently. People expect me to share terrible stories of racism or ill treatment, but I have no stories like that. When I was treated differently, it was because of Janet DeBolt's humanity, a spirit that informed her that I was a child who needed more time, love, attention. I got those things and more from her, and I also got an introduction to this campus. This is where I'm going to college. That's what I thought while staring at Smith Hall from a distance. This is where I'm going to college. It was a summer afternoon, and the DeBolts and I piled into the family car for a drive a few miles away to drop off their son, David, at lacrosse camp at Hobart and William Smith colleges in Geneva, New York. It was one of the most beautiful places I had ever seen. About 6 years later, I met Mara O'Loughlin and Sally Webster at the Barbizon Hotel in New York City for my interview to attend William Smith College. I remember that meeting with Mara and Sally as if it happened yesterday. I understood that William Smith was a women's college, and while I couldn't articulate why that mattered at the time, it didn't take long for me to find out. I found my voice. My childhood experiences and the opportunities that unfolded for me on this campus shaped my desire to become an employment attorney. In 1991, I joined a small employment law firm in New York City. That same year, President George H.W. Bush nominated Clarence Thomas, a one-year federal circuit judge, to succeed retiring Associate Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. In spite of his limited judicial background, there was little opposition to Thomas's nomination. Then, someone leaked an FBI interview of Anita Hill, a little-known lawyer turned professor. She had worked for Clarence Thomas. Hill's comments to the FBI about her experiences working for Thomas 10 years prior forced the Senate Judiciary Committee to subpoena Hill to testify. In October 1991, Hill testified that Thomas repeatedly sexually harassed her while he was her supervisor at the Department of Education and later at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The details of Anita Hill's testimony and how she was treated by the all-white male Judiciary Committee led by Senator Joseph Biden captivated, angered, and motivated many women. Clarence Thomas denied Anita Hill's allegations. He complained that her testimony was a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks by white liberals who were seeking to block a black conservative from taking a seat on the Supreme Court. Anita was using her voice. The country was listening. In 1991, I was a very young lawyer, and I was completely captivated by the hearings. As an employment lawyer, I understood that Anita Hill's testimony was historic, and I knew that her testimony would alter the course of my career. A year after her testimony and Clarence Thomas being confirmed to the Supreme Court, sexual harassment complaints at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission rose by 50%. Corporations also began demanding policies, training, and investigations to address bad actors. 27 years have passed since those hearings, and a lot has changed for women in the workplace. However, and as we all know from #MeToo, the plethora of state pay equity laws and studies performed by organizations like Catalyst and Lean In, women, and women of color in particular, continue to be paid well below men. I recently saw a headline of an article on LinkedIn that read, "If white women experience a glass ceiling, the ceiling for women of color is made of concrete." I am an eternal optimist, and my optimism fuels my desire to keep driving for change. It fuels my voice. The world continues to evolve. We have evolved as a society since the treatment of Anita Hill by the Senate Judiciary Committee and recently the #MeToo movement. Voices drive evolution. Today, I'm using my voice to do work that matters. I chose a career that gave me the freedom to leverage my background as a lawyer to teach business and HR leaders how to lead while being mindful of their obligation to uphold the law. Over the course of my career, I've investigated hundreds of complaints of discrimination based on gender, race, ethnicity, religion, disability, and gender identity. I have sat in meetings with senior leaders and briefed them on my investigative findings and recommendations on how to address misconduct and violations of the law. My career is a culmination of hard work, support, and mentoring from leaders and colleagues who often saw qualities in me that I couldn't see. It is no mistake that my otherness in corporate America, like my otherness in acting as a translator for my mother, paved paths for me to quietly enter rooms, uncover, and remediate misconduct. Beyond my knowledge of the law, the value of what I do for a living lies in acting with integrity, empathy, and discretion. My voice matters in my profession, having a persuasive voice, and importantly, knowing when to use it. I'm an introvert by nature, and I have a strong voice. Those two things can go hand in hand. I enjoy being in the background. I don't have to be front and center. Being an introvert doesn't mean being silent or ducking down. I have learned that this aspect of my personality is a strength. You are engaging, learning, helping, guiding inside organizations where so much good work can be done. My point of view drives change. You have a voice. Your voice matters. To the students, I want to say, many of you are just beginning your college journey. Some of you are beginning to think about what life has in store outside of these colleges. I, too, am beginning to consider what my next act in life will look like. So, here are a few words of wisdom from my perspective so far. To the first-generation students, I see you. You earned the right to be here. Dream big. You got this. Learn to say no. It will free you up to say yes. Learn how to draw boundaries. It will keep you sane. Find your voice, but always consider when and how to use it. My final words come from Professor and lawyer Anita Hill. I did what my conscience told me to do, and you can't fail if you do that. Good luck. Be well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margarita Ramos, for that inspiring talk, an example of the kind of person this place builds. As the Dean of Hobart College, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Hobart student speaker, another great student that this place builds. Each spring semester, students elect one rising junior from each of the colleges to serve as a non-voting member of the Board of Trustees for one academic year. In their senior year, student trustees become voting members of the board. This year, that student, that Hobart student, is Gavin Gross. From Pipersville, Pennsylvania, Gavin is double majoring in economics and Asian studies, a member of Club Soccer, the Mandarin Language Exchange, Finance Society, and the Kappa Alpha fraternity. I'm not done yet. Gavin is a volunteer for America Counts and Days of Service, the recipient of the Hawaii Enrichment Scholarship from the Taiwan Ministry of Education. He spent a summer in Taipei participating in the International Chinese Language Program, and last semester studying abroad in Nanjing, China. This summer, he had a competitive internship with Citibank, and yes, it's not even September yet, and he has already received a job offer from Citibank's private banking program. Gavin Gross.
Thank you, Dean Hussein. Jack Canfield, an American author, is quoted as saying, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." I decided to begin with this quote about fear with you today because I was fortunate enough to receive advice early on in my career from a professor here about my biggest fear. Now, before I share with you what that fear is, I want you to look to the left and then look to the right of you. There's a 75% chance that one of the people share the same fear that I do. That fear is glossophobia, which, if you're unsure what it means, is the fear of exactly what I'm doing standing in front of you right now, public speaking. During the summer between my first year and sophomore years, I got the opportunity to study at Taiwan University in Taipei. It was an intensive Mandarin summer program, and as part of the final project, we each had to give a presentation in front of the entire language school, a room full of about 150 people. When I stood up to present, I lost feeling in my legs. I began to speak to the crowd, and my voice trembled uncontrollably, and I could not understand why until I looked down to discover my legs were shaking. I kept telling him to stop, but there was nothing I could do. Adding to the trembling of my voice was the fact that I was speaking another language. Thus, most people in the room could barely comprehend what I was saying. It is difficult to describe the facial expressions I received that day, but I will tell you that nothing is worse than realizing a room of 150 people are focused on listening to you speak, and the majority of the room does not understand anything you were trying to convey. When I finally made it off the stage and back to my apartment, I told myself I would never put myself through a humiliating experience like that again, speaking in front of a crowd. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm standing in front of all of you. The truth is, the initial statistic I shared with you is not factual. That is because 75% of all your fears are not speaking in public, but 75% of all of you are simply afraid of failing. Public speaking is public, very public. Our fear is actually failing in front of an audience. But the great thing about HWS is that the people to the right and the left of you are the exact audience you want to fail in front of. That was the advice I was given early on in my career at HWS. There's no better place to fail than here. People often tell you failure is important, but neglect to tell you that the most important time in your life to fail is right here. That is what makes this place special. The small community, a little over 2,000 of us, where you're able to form relationships with not just your friends and your roommates, but your professors, coaches, RAs, career counselors, and even the president. That is why here at HWS, it is so much easier to join a club sport you've never played before, study abroad in a place you've never been, or take a class in a subject you're unfamiliar with, because you have a network of support that will help you when you fall. In fact, last spring was by far my most challenging semester when I studied in Nanjing, China. But the one thing I still remember from that experience is that although I was thousands of miles away from school, I still had the support of HWS. For instance, my advisor, Professor Drennan, was emailing me asking me about my experience and giving me recommendations on places to drink coffee. Hi, Professor Drennan. Professor Joe and Professor Wu were also emailing with me back and forth to see how I was holding up. And I'm sure that they will both be proud when I end this speech today with a Chinese idiom, or chengyu, which has an English translation of failure is the mother of success. Because being able to fail here with this support network and with these people has made all the difference to me. It's changed my life, and it will change yours too. Thank you.
Wow. I don't know much Mandarin, but xie, that one I got. Thank you, Gavin. That was great. As the Dean of William Smith College, it is my honor to introduce Caitlin Lasher, William Smith Student Trustee. Like Gavin, Caitlin is also a voting member of the Board of Trustees. With a major in political science, which was my own major, and minors in philosophy and education, Caitlin is the Vice President of Theta Phi Alpha, a member of the William Smith rugby team, the former secretary for William Smith Congress, a member of the Women's Collective, a literacy volunteer at the Ontario Yates County Library. I'm getting tired already. I don't know how she does all this. A Laurel Society member, a student worker for the Office of Admissions, Communications, and Advancement, and a member of the Presidential Search Committee. Caitlin has studied abroad twice, once in Auckland, New Zealand, and again during the spring semester in Maastricht, the Netherlands. Caitlin is also a proud member of the HWS First Generation Initiative and the first in her family who will be graduating from college later this year. So please join me in welcoming Caitlin Lasher.
Thank you, Dean Kensig. So there I was, less than 100 miles from the Russian border, on an eastbound train in Poland, heading the opposite way from where I needed to go. With no language skills in either Polish or Russian, limited cash, no visa, 10% battery, I knew that I was going to have to figure this out on my own. Unlike Taken, there would be no rescue mission for this American girl who managed to get herself into trouble in a foreign country. Unsurprisingly, this certainly was not my first encounter with uncomfortable and challenging situations. In fact, within the last 3 months, I had caused a scene at a French border, missed numerous trains and flights, got food poisoning in Dublin, and had a run-in with the Dutch version of the mafia. And so there I was in Poland with no money, no phone, and no government rescue team. And yet I had felt as relaxed and in control as I had ever been. It was not because of the street smarts I had gotten from the past few months of international travel, but it was from the skills I had learned and the people I've met while here at Hobart and William Smith colleges. It has been the professors who pushed me to question what I thought I'd known about the world and encouraged me to think beyond institutional and physical borders. It has been the classes that have challenged my own conventional academic bubble and have helped me to navigate a difficult and often puzzling world. It has been my peers who have pushed me to be a better student, better leader, and better friend. Over the course of your next 4 years, you will be challenged and pushed in a way that you have not before. However, though you will walk away with a degree and similar skills as your peers, your experience here at the colleges will be as unique as you all are. You will all have your respective successes, losses, and moments in between. You will all experience your time here differently and will make an impact on the history of the colleges in a way that only you can. And most importantly, you will all have your own versions of Poland. You will have the challenges that you will face, and ultimately, only you can conquer these problems with the lessons you have learned here. Take comfort in knowing that the thousands of alumni and alumni who have come before you have had their own versions of Poland too. From taking that difficult political science seminar, to opening an investment firm, to serving in the Peace Corps, to protesting injustices, to being the first woman to receive a medical degree. You will be thrown into difficult situations while on and off campus, and only you can be the one to push through them. You will encounter Polands of all sizes, situations, and severities. Just know that you are not alone when you encounter these seemingly impossible situations. Here at Hobart and William Smith colleges, though you may deal with issues individually, you have a community of people here who will support you in any endeavor or any situation that you may come across. The next 4 years ahead of you will be filled with your own versions of Poland, and I am confident that you will handle them with honor, dignity, and grace. To the classes of Hobart and William Smith 2022, I am excited to see what Polands you will all overcome and how you will shape the colleges as the next generation of leaders. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome. I am Dwayne Lucas, the Provost and Dean of Faculty. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Associate Professor of Media and Society, Leah Schaefer, the 2018 recipient of the Faculty Prize for Teaching. Professor Schaefer teaches courses that explore the culture and history of media, television, including television, film, and advertising. Her criticism and pedagogy have been widely published, appearing in multiple journals, books, and anthologies. A member of the faculty since 2008, she holds her bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees from Cornell University, and has taught at Ithaca College and for the Barred Prison Initiative, where she serves as campus coordinator. Professor Schaefer.
Thank you, Provost Lucas, for the thoughtful introduction. Faculty, friends, honored guests, welcome. Welcome, William Smith students, and welcome, Hobart students. I am honored and humbled to be speaking to you here today. In this short address, I will offer you some thoughts on the value of a small liberal arts education, some advice from graduating seniors to first years, some advice from me. But before I want to get there, I want to invite you to experience and appreciate today, right here and right now, this signal moment in your life. Let's just take a breath and enjoy the air conditioning, for example. I invite everyone here to mark the occasion of Convocation 2018 with a few gestures. I'll explain first, and then I'll give you a moment to follow my suggestions. My first suggestion will be to take a selfie, and either keep it as a reminder of this day or post it somewhere on social media, hashtag HWS Colleges. Digital traces are ephemeral, but they are also potentially infinite. So you will be committing an image of your anticipation, excitement, and intensity to the ages. My second suggestion is to make a physical, personal connection with one of your classmates or one of the other people near you. Turn to someone you haven't met yet, introduce yourself, shake their hand, and welcome them to HWS. Like digital traces, personal communications can be fleeting, or they can be lifelong. The person you're meeting is almost certainly also a little excited and a little scared, anticipating new adventures and feeling anxious. Offering them a moment of connection and community building is a generous and meaningful gesture. Okay, so find your phone and your hand and commemorate this moment.
I'm so excited.
Okay.
I didn't like that one.
One way to appreciate the fullness of experience is, as we just did, to mark it with some kind of gesture. To think both about yourself in this moment and the way that this moment is affecting the world around you, your community, your peers, and the world. For the class of 2022, this moment marks entrance into adulthood, a time when you have new opportunities and new responsibilities. The ritual of convocation, the beginning of the academic year, marks the start of a period of investigation, creation, and realization. We are all on the threshold of transformation at all times, but here we have marked for ourselves the start of a new one. So, where do we go from here? Well, short answer, here is where we go from here. Geneva, New York, the space between Seneca Lake and the Wegmans parking lot. You have chosen a small liberal arts college for your transformative experience, and part of that choice entails living together with a smallish group of people in a smallish place for a smallish period of time. If you're going to make the most of this smallish situation, you're going to have to figure out how to enlarge the small, how to take the critical thinking you do in this small campus community of lovely buildings and apply it to an understanding of the world at large. The small liberal arts campus is built for this kind of thinking in scale. You may spend your time delving deep into one line of poetry, or you may spend it observing remote galaxies through an astrograph telescope. Or, on really good days, you will get to do both. And maybe, if you're lucky, you will be inspired to write a line of poetry about how it feels to be an eye facing the vast, nearly limitless night sky. We make this thinking in scale utterly accessible to you. You are in the unique privileged situation of having remarkably sophisticated tools and resources at your fingertips. I'm talking both abstract, conceptual thinking tools and literal, material, actual resources. During your time in this space, the doors of internationally known scholars are literally open to you personally. Go in. We have books and computers and cameras and microscopes and sprung dance floors. Use them. People who have studied information research sit in the library and wait for you to ask them how to find things out. Start a conversation. Everything here is built, maintained, and provided for your use. Your primary responsibility here is to utilize these magnificent resources so that you can improve your ability to live a life of consequence and expand your ability to be a just and intelligent person in the world. The luxury and potential rewards of this situation are inestimable. One of the ways that faculty have worked towards constructing meaningful resources for you is by creating capstone classes. Courses in your major that you take at the end of your degree program that are meant to top off the foundation built by other courses. On the last day of my capstone course, the Media and Society Senior Seminar, I asked my students to make videos of themselves in which they share advice with first-year students. The prompt I give them is explain things that you wish you had known when you were a first year. Like today, the last day of your senior seminar is a threshold experience. And when students mark that occasion with reflection, they come up with useful and meaningful advice. So I'm going to share some of that advice with you here today. Some students offer advice about the brave and self-reliant people we should strive to be here. They say, quote, "The people that you meet at the beginning of your time at HWS will find their own paths. Don't be a follower. You'll hear people talking about what the easiest courses are. Don't listen to them. Do what you want to do, learn what you want to learn, and be who you want to be." Along these same lines, another student urges us to accept and celebrate who we are by saying, "Being unapologetically yourself always comes with a price. Be sure you pay it." Some students reflect on their academic choices and the pleasures of discovery and exploration. This student reflects, "I wish I knew not to be so worried I didn't get into the classes I wanted for the next semester. It is good to explore different departments you aren't initially interested in because you might find those are the classes you enjoy the most." Another student shares this endorsement of the liberal arts model when saying, "I wish I had known that being in a specific major does not limit you to a specific model of industry or industry." Graduating seniors have learned some things. One student offered concrete advice about course planning when she said, "I wish I had known to take as many classes for my major as possible, as early as possible. Taking 5.5 classes during senior spring when the rest of your friends are celebrating, taking only classes that interest them and enjoying their last semester of college is a huge bummer." This next student's words inspired some of my address to you here today by saying, "My advice would be to really take advantage of all the resources and opportunities the school has to offer. Go to your professors' office hours. Really get to know them and form a relationship with them. It definitely helps to make your college experience more interesting and definitely easier." Lastly, this student urges us to lead the lives of consequence promised by our motto when saying, "Overall, I'd say take your passion, what makes you stand out as an individual, and find out a way through your course's hands-on experience not only to speak out, but speak first about those things that you want to see change for the better. Blaze your own path, explore widely, embrace uncertainty, plan carefully, take advantage of resources, and make changes for the better. This is all the hard-won advice of your peers. I know they will be thrilled to learn that their words are reaching you now. You can honor them by taking their advice to heart." I will now conclude by offering you 3 pieces of advice from me, Professor Leah Schaefer, winner of the 2018 Excellence in Teaching Award. Learn to love learning. One of the greatest gifts of a small liberal arts education is the cultivation of pleasure in the act of learning. Embrace this gift. The resources we offer, the wide range of subjects to explore, the multiple enriching activities, these are opportunities for you to practice finding enjoyment in the acts of thinking and learning. Include the act of pleasure in the expansion and improvement of your ability to be a just and intelligent person in the world. Many of you have been on a bullet train of ambition and anxiety for the past few years just trying to get to this place. Now that you're in this smallish place, let it become a dense and lush universe that locates your ambition and anxiety within the pleasures of productive uncertainty and discovery. If you cultivate a love of learning, it will be a gift that you can take with you from here for the rest of your life. My second piece of advice addresses the ambition and anxiety I just invoked. As I'm sure you all know, life is hard. And transitioning into adult life, in particular, is fraught with freakouts. When I was in college, I learned that inhaling for 4 counts and exhaling for 4 counts really helped me in moments of crisis. As I am a lifelong learner, I recently learned a twist on the old inhale-exhale model of breathing. My yoga teacher calls this twist the angry pug. I will teach it to you now. You begin by inhaling for 4 counts, but when you exhale, you jut out your jaw and make an angry pug sound, like this. All right, so let's all try to do this, all right? So inhale, exhale. It feels great, right? It really loosens your jaw. You immediately feel relaxed when you do this. Frankly, I also think that looking a little bit foolish increases our capacity for empathy and for joy. Remember the angry pug when you can't get into that class you want. When your roommate messes with your stuff. Or when you read the news. When you are freaking out, address the situation with an angry pug or two, and then get back to making changes for the better. My last piece of advice reflects my earlier observations about being an individual who is also a member of a community, a single eye in the vast sky. You can make your voice count. Literally, your voice will be counted when you register to vote and vote every single time you get the chance. The students who have come before you have urged you to speak out for what you believe in and make changes for the better. You can do this pretty easily by going to hws.turbovote.org. That's hws.turbovote.org. Just a few minutes of your time can make you an active, meaningful participant in Geneva and in the world. You are part of our adult community now, and only 5% of eligible HWS students voted in the last midterm elections. That is an abdication of responsibility and, most importantly, a lost opportunity. The smaller elections have a big impact, especially on the places where we live and work. We know you can do this. Embrace your roles as an adult and let us hear what you want to say. We are all in this together, and the more people's voices we hear, the better off we will all be. So, root yourself into this moment, this precipice, this beginning. Learn to love the challenges and embrace the resources we provide for you. Take a deep breath right here and now to envision your place in the forces linking Geneva, New York to the world. Make every day that you spend here a convocation, an opportunity for exploration, a transformative threshold for possibility. Build community, enlarge the small, Mark occasions for yourself and strive to enjoy your privileged place as a person alive right here and right now. Thank you.
Let's see if I get this right. I shouldn't have scheduled myself last. I will be short. This afternoon, our distinguished speakers shared the rewards of taking calculated risks, learning through failure, and experiencing the freedom and responsibility of finding your own voice. And as you may have deduced, this wisdom is the product of much doubt, uncertainty, and discomfort. Learning is not smooth sailing. The process of education entails regularly taking stock of what we've previously assumed or taken for given, holding it up to the light and asking if it's still sound. I'm going to take you back to the dark days of the 1960s. In my college years at a little place called St. Peter's in Jersey City, New Jersey. We were in the thick of the civil rights era in the Vietnam War. This was an age when every time you turned on the TV, you were met with leaders like John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, who appealed to the higher values of love, compassion, and service to others. And yet, the 1963 Gallup poll found that 78% of white people would leave their neighborhood if many black families moved in. Regarding Dr. King's march on Washington, 60% of the respondents had an unfavorable view of the march, stating that they felt it would cause violence, it would not accomplish anything. In 1964, the plurality of Americans thought communists were infiltrating the civil rights organizations. Even though they were protests and sit-ins, and draft card burnings began that year, a poll in 1965, when I graduated from college, found that 61% of Americans believed that sending troops into Vietnam was not a mistake. When I was 20, I myself marched in a pro-Vietnam parade in Jersey City, New Jersey. It was 1964. And as we marched, looking around at the people lined on the sidewalks cheering, I saw several of my classmates, people I knew well, holding anti-war placards. The march culminated in a rally where speakers voiced support for the United States military involvement in Vietnam. The war had been going on for quite some time at this point, but the U.S. had yet to send troops. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union and China were supporting the North Vietnamese both ideologically and financially. And there was a lot of fear, including right there in that rally in Jersey City, that if the North Vietnamese won, communism would spread through Asia and soon the rest of the world. Listening to those speakers, to that fearful logic, I realized I didn't know what I was doing in that crowd. I knew that wasn't me. Thinking about my friends with the anti-war banners and the violence and destruction they were standing up against, I realized I didn't know what I thought I knew. I knew that what I thought I knew wasn't actually what I believed. I said nothing. My voice was silent. Thanks to that running dialogue I had with my classmates and my professors, in my own mind, with thinkers I was reading over the next few years, I graduated to a more articulated sense of my own values, and just as important, my blind spot. I found my voice, and I began to use it. Just a few months after my graduation, Dr. King delivered a speech at St. Peter's, where, as the university student newspaper noted, he declared that the American dream of all men being created equal has, as yet, been unfulfilled. He denounced segregation as sinful and bitterly condemned those who profess principles of democracy, but in truth practice the antithesis of these principles. King said, "Unless we live as brothers, we shall perish as fools." The time, he said, is always now. That was the last pro-war march I ever supported. It took a while, but I felt more comfortable with Dr. King's words. As we begin this academic year, I urge you to keep that idea in mind. The time is always now. The time to take risks is always now. The time to find your voice is always now. The time to question what you're hearing and seeing and thinking and doing is always now. The time to seek out new people, new ideas, to examine your own blind spots and preconceptions, to inform ignorance and to be open to the truth of another's lived experience, the time is always now. None of us is perfect, nor will we ever be. The project of education is built on coming up short. When we fail, we try again. The time is always now. Your time is now as you begin your career at HWS, a place to challenge your doubts and believe in your commitments, a time to question and a time for answers, and a time to use your voice. Welcome to Hobart and William Smith Colleges. We will assist you on your journey to know who you really are. Thank you very much.
Hobart and William Smith, classes of 2022, will you please rise? And I invite you to rise wherever you are. 100 feet or so to the north of that storied location where the sun rose over Seneca Lake and the foundation of these colleges was laid, there stands a chapel. And in that chapel, there is an altar. And on that altar are inscribed the words, "Behold, I make all things new." As you begin a new academic year, may it be for you a year of blessing. Be blessed in your waking and in your sleeping, in your learning and in your teaching, in your friendships and in your solitude, in your work and in your play. Face your future with courage and with hope. Make this campus glad with your presence. Go now and make these colleges new.
This now concludes Convocation and begins the 2018 to 19 academic year.